existential questions.
Hello everyone, I'm Vanessa Friedman, Fashion Director of the New York Times. Thank you for joining us for the opening event of On the Runway, a month-long virtual series in which we take you inside studios, to the front row, and backstage during the first mostly in-person fashion season in over a year, going from New York to London, Milan, and Paris with some of the most fascinating voices in the industry. We started this series a year ago, when Fashion Week had gone entirely digital, and people were making all sorts of predictions about sweatpants taking over the world. And there were very intense conversations going on within the industry about the future of seasons, shows, and sales, not to mention sustainability and social justice, and the question of whether the trauma of the pandemic was a chance for a fashion system gotten out of control to hit pause and reassess. But has it? It is my great pleasure to introduce 4 speakers who are going to discuss exactly that. What, if anything, has really changed in fashion? What should change? And where we're all going next? First, Anna Wintour, Chief Content Officer of Condé Nast and Honorary Chairman of the Met Gala, which this year is taking place the day after New York Fashion Week. She's zooming in from her office in New York.
Hello,
Anna.
Vanessa. Thank you for having me.
Next, Nicolas Ghesquière, the Artistic Director of Women's Collections at Louis Vuitton since 2013, and the man who put Balenciaga back on the map. For over 20 years, Nicolas has pushed boundaries in fashion as one of the most influential designers of the 21st century. Nicolas, you're coming to us from Paris, right?
Yes, I am in Paris. Yes. Hi, Vanessa.
Salut. Next, actress, producer, and beauty entrepreneur Tracee Ellis Ross, known for her award-winning role on Blackish. A former model, Tracee has bridged fashion and entertainment, using stints as host of the American Music Awards and the BET Awards to make carefully targeted style statements, particularly in support of Black designers. Tracee, you're in New York too, right?
I am. I'm in New York. Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. And finally, José Neves, creator of Farfetch, the global luxury online marketplace founded in 2007 and now valued at over $15 billion. Farfetch is also the owner of New Guards Group, the fashion company that produces Off-White, Palm Angels, and Heron Preston. So José has pretty much a 360-degree view on fashion world. Hello, José. You're in London, right?
Yes, I'm in London, and thank you for having me, Vanessa. Looking forward to the conversation.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for agreeing to be part of my firing line. Just kidding. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. This conversation is being recorded and will be available to stream on the New York Times Events YouTube channel. We've also asked our audience for some questions, which we'll answer at the end. But now it's my privilege to kick this conversation off. And Anna, I'd like to start with you, and with New York Fashion Week, since it just began. There's been a real drum roll around the return of shows, and clearly there's a major economic imperative in the city to get this moving again. There's even a Met Gala, which is going to be a sort of exclamation point at the end of this New York Fashion Week. Yet the Delta variant is raging, COVID hospitalization numbers are going up, the 20th anniversary of September 11th is coming. So I wonder if you can speak to why returning to shows matters, and whether you see this as a new stage for New York fashion and Fashion Week in general.
Yes, I do, Vanessa. And I want to point out that the date of the Met Gala was very intentional. When the museum and I discussed bringing the exhibition forward, because we were looking at moving it to 22, we felt that it would inspire designers that had possibly left New York to come back, like Joseph Altuzarra or Tom Brown. We wanted to encourage people to think within the safety protocols, obviously, how they could safely show physically rather than virtually. And I feel that we really wanted to inspire communities, whether they were fashion communities or the food community, who's very involved with the Met this season, or the arts, obviously, and the theater, to think about bringing New York back to life. And for that, we all have to be together. And yes, you mentioned the Delta variant and numbers are surging, but actually, I have to say, I think the numbers in New York are much more under control than elsewhere in the United States, because people are sensible enough on the whole to be vaccinated. And that gives you a great deal of protection against the Delta vaccine and COVID generally. And I applaud Mayor de Blasio and the museums and the designers that are taking the approach that you go to a museum or go to a fashion show or to go to the theater, vaccination is mandatory, as I believe it should be throughout the United States and the world.
But do you feel there's something particularly optimistic or important about having shows in person? I mean, we've just had a year of watching them online.
I think we miss it, Vanessa. I know everyone's been super creative with their films and their lookbooks online, but it's just not the same as meeting people, talking to people, seeing people, and seeing the up close and personal. I think it's an emotional connection that we need to have, and we can do it in a pared back way that is safe for everybody that is present, but also inspiring. And I think as a result of this year and a half where we've all been living in kind of a limbo and reevaluating our lives and our communities, and certainly how we approach fashion, I think what we're going to see is going to be so uplifting and creative and very much missed and very much needed.
Nicola, you're having a real show after having, sort of digital shows with tiny audiences, right, for the last couple seasons. What are you hoping to get out of this, and why move to real life, I guess?
Well, I'm obviously very happy to be able to have, an audience again in Paris. This last year was very interesting in many ways, We had to learn, how to reach people that were at home and how to try to give them, a pure moment of fashion, like what is a real fashion show, I would say. It was not always easy. We had to learn fast to become visual artists in a way. I think everyone did their best, and that I think that was a very interesting proposition. And now we are richest in experience. We know how to talk to people digitally better, and we've got wonderful results with that. I mean, record-breaking views, obviously, and reactions. But of course, a real audience is incomparable, a real fashion emotion, what happened at that moment that is, a unique fashion show, a live experience for the lucky ones who can assist to those presentations, is absolutely unique. So I'm looking forward to do it. What's new, I guess, what's going to happen in every fashion week is now the way we will be cautious and of course safety prime, and it's what is going to matter the most before everything else. I had the experience to be the last fashion show pre-COVID, and I can tell you it was still a traumatic experience because the danger was raising. We were the last one in Paris, and we tried to manage it the best we could at the time. And thank God no one was sick after this presentation. But to think back, of the responsibility we had at the moment, I think we really have to be really, really careful for this fashion months coming and make sure, everyone is safe first. And then enjoy what you love to do, which is beautiful clothes and a new proposition. So it is what is the state of mind, the spirit for what's coming for me. Well, that's the feeling I have. Yes.
It's funny. I think Anna and I were at that show, and actually,
fantastic show, Nicola.
and talking about that.
Fantastic show. I remember it very clearly.
But having that conversation before it started about what's coming, what's going to happen, and we had none of us any idea what was actually coming.
Yeah.
I mean, Tracy, I know I saw you at the Kirby Jean Raymond's Pire Moss show just earlier this summer, and you sort of dipped in and out of being at shows. Will you be attending any shows this week? Or you're in New York?
I won't be attending any shows. I was really grateful for the hybrid sense of responsibility that the fashion industry took on. There's a way to responsibly be in this pandemic, and I was able to have access to the fashion that I love from home, but I'm also anxious to get back in person. I won't be going to any shows personally because I'm saving myself for the Emmys and the Met, and I'm really trying to stay responsible and be limited in what I do, which I think is what all of us are trying to find. What's the balance? How do you bring yourself back into your life in a responsible way that takes care of your fellows and your the people around you in your community, but also allows you to live some sort of life that has all the things that make you a whole person, and glamour and fashion and art and the visual feast of the eyes is a really important part of your soul and being inspired as a human being. And so I'm glad that we are able to find a way to do these things responsibly. And if you're vaccinated, it makes a really big difference.
I mean, as someone who is a public figure, who dresses with real kind of deliberation and forethought, how important to you is seeing a show, seeing clothes kind of in a narrative that a designer creates?
It's truly the pièce de résistance. It's the thing, that's how you start to see the vision of an artist as a designer, and as an artist, the in-person. That creativity that happens live is nothing that you can recreate virtually. You can give a semblance of it, you can give a suggestion of it, and as Nicholas said, the visual art of fashion can happen in a particular way. I'm an actress, so I know that there's a story that you can tell through a screen. But there's nothing like in person. And so I am grateful that that I'm able to start back. I mean, listen, as a virtual person, I've still been doing the earrings and the whole thing. There's nothing that's going to keep me away from looking glamorous. I had sweatpants, but they were still really chic ones.
I love the lipstick.
Yeah, that never goes away.
Jose, how about you? How have the last 18 months changed your perspective on shows and what we really need to see in person or not?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it may seem strange coming from someone that is, primarily working in the online world, not in the offline world, but I really believe in the physicality of fashion. And before Farfetch, I was a fashion designer, shoe designer for many, many years. and a boutique owner, a multi-brand boutique owner, and I learned that there's something magical when done right, in the human relationship with the customer, and in the case of presentations, fashion shows, with either the buyers or the editors or opinion makers, right? And this is irreplaceable. I don't think that can be replaced by online. And I think the big opportunity is the convergence of both worlds, right? Because the online world is not going to go away. Actually, the online world was already a big part of fashion, right? So digital media is now a big part of the media cycle, and digital sales, as Tracy was alluding to, helped us all through COVID to stay well dressed and well heeled, and that's very much was already part of the industry and will continue to be. The big question is, how do these two worlds converge, right? And that's what we're really trying to help the industry, help the retailers, the brands that partner with us, really, try to have answers to that. And I don't think everyone has cracked that formula yet.
That's actually a good question. How do these two worlds converge? Anna, what do you think?
I think, Vanessa, before COVID, we were all saying there were way too many shows, too much product, too many hours, days, weeks, months spent on the road. And I think COVID has pushed us into making decisions and choices about how fashion has to move forward. Maybe we would have just continued to talk about, but not do anything about. So I'm really hopeful that designers are going to be much more focused on clothes that are extremely creative, clothes that last, the clothes that have an emotional connection to the wonderful people that wear them, like Tracy, and that we will help talk to our audiences, our readers, our customers about clothes that last. And I'm very encouraged to hear that some big houses are even including vintage areas within their online spaces and their bricks and mortar spaces, just to help to encourage audiences, readers, customers to understand that clothes are not disposable, that they can last a lifetime, that they can be something just like a piece of jewelry that you can hand down to your children. So I'm hoping that sense of things that last, that you can wear again and again, that don't have to be thrown out after a season, is something that designers, media publications, and all of us will help encourage that kind of thinking. José, I'd be really interested to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the past year and a half were also an opportunity for all of us to advance a number of agendas which are super important. I think sustainability is one of them. Diversity and inclusion is another. And I think in terms of sustainability in fashion, I really believe circularity is a must, right? Because we have essentially two problems. So one is we produce too much stuff, and two, we produce a lot of the wrong stuff, right? So these are the two problems. And the first problem for me, one of the ways of tackling it is making sure the clothes work harder for all of us, right? And that means resale, that means restoration services, that means rental, that means, there's a number of business models. We launched pre-owned on Farfetch and actually a number of years ago, and we've actually expanded our services to the US. So we now buy actually what's in our customers' wardrobe, and we give them credit on their Farfetch accounts, and we've been selling pre-owned and vintage for a number of years. We've launched a restoration service as well to restore luxury items, and I do agree with you. It's fantastic to see retailers, department stores, for example, Selfridges here in the UK, opening resale sections, and as you say, also luxury brands embracing that. And I think that's going to be a big part.
Vintage.
I love vintage, but certain things are vintage and certain things are just
Nicola, we're going to see vintage Vuitton. We're going to see vintage Vuitton.
Well, yeah. Well, I'd like to call them like living archives. I think it's a because I think there's nothing better to know that the clothes can live long, and they will transmit, as you said, Anna, to like younger generation or collectors, craft and stories that are really interesting. So I absolutely think it's amazing. Like Jose, you said that there is some dispositive that are getting ready for encouraging people to give those clothes a longer life, a second life. And I want to precise something that, as a director artistic, my responsibility, of course, my mission is to do new, and sometimes very quickly, and sometimes too quickly, to be honest. And the challenge is really inspiring, and I enjoy doing it. But of course, like every artistic director, my real dream is to have timeless pieces that last like more than a season and that people will wear forever, which is the biggest fantasy. And I'm lucky enough and old enough now to have the experience of collections I did more than 20 years ago, and that because of the resale market has become like collectible, has become appreciated by young people, has become trendy again, if I can say, in fashion again. So I absolutely enjoy this cycle, and I absolutely encourage this circulation, and of course, not mentioning the fantastic impact on sustainability and at large the image that it gives to fashion, that clothes are absolutely not disposable. Yes. Oh, we lost Vanessa. My sentence might be too long.
No, your sentence was perfect. I was going to say, I feel like even within the fashion industry, in all business entities, there's like a duality of purpose in terms of creating, but also having a responsibility. And I think there's a narrative change that we need to have around the consumer and how we shop, and a responsibility from that perspective as well. And I think, one of the things that I thought was really beautiful during this pandemic was that having digital fashion shows, and because of online, people were able to have access to fashion and luxury in a different way. People that aren't usually front row, that don't usually have that sort of entrance way into that world, where they're just seeing it through social media, were really able to change the sense of the audience's diversity in how we have access to luxury and fashion. And I think that moves into all the different areas.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is absolutely right, Tracy. And what we need to learn from COVID is how we can take the lessons of what we've all learned in the past 18 months and combine that with the excitement of when a designer puts out on the runway a physical show, which is, it's like going to going to live theater. There's something about that is just magical and can't be replaced.
Yeah, and I think there is also very important is also that the entertainment industry is encouraging that, like by recycling their dress, all those beautiful gowns and dresses that we do for like fantastic like awards ceremony or event that are making people dream. And I really appreciate that we see more and more people with a lot of visibility wearing like vintage clothes or like the clothes they already wore once without being afraid to wear it twice. I think it's a very chic way of honing fashion today.
The living archives. I was always taught, as I was growing up, my mom always said, you can spend a lot of money on your clothes if you use them and if you take care of them. And I've always repeated things, and I've never understood why. I feel like that's what style is. It's about combining different things in different places, because fashion and style is so much an expression, your creative expression, and it's one of the things that, I think it's one of the magic spaces of fashion, is that the person that's wearing them can create whatever they want out of that. And so if we allow that to be a part of the narrative of fashion, I think it allows so many more people the opportunity to feel enough and celebrated. It's
interesting, Tracy, because helping a number of different people with their looks for the Met next Monday, so many of our guests are asking for vintage, or what did you call it, Nicola, living archives. They want to combine possibly something new with something that they've had in their wardrobe or that they've had their eye on for some time. And I think the more visibility we give to that, both in the media world and as designers, Nicola and I have talked about this many, many times, that it's maybe important sometimes for designers to take pieces from their past collections and put them out on the runway, mixed in with something new, just again to re-emphasize the importance of creativity and craft and how it really lasts. So I'm excited to see what we have in New York in the shows, but also on the Met carpet on Monday night.
Finally, it's time for the audience questions. First, here's one. Can fashion thrive without exclusion? How? Prices for luxury brands just seem to be getting higher and higher. With the effect of the pandemic and people not knowing what the future holds, how do you think these high prices can be sustainable, or in order to keep brands alive, will they have to take a different approach?
I actually think that fashion is maybe at its most democratic. I think if you look at who's showing next week in New York and you see the incredible amount of young designers who are not producing, clothes that sell for the highest level prices, and how much attention all these young designers are now receiving. They are the future of American fashion, and I'm so grateful to Andrew Bolton, the curator at the Metropolitan Museum, for really spotlighting. I think over 70% of the designers in the exhibition that we're opening next Monday are young designers that represent the future of American fashion. So I actually feel, speaking here particularly from the American point of view, that it has never been more inclusive, not exclusive, that we are opening our doors at all kinds of different price levels. And if something is well made and crafted well, it's not necessarily have to be the most expensive. I think you can achieve craft at many different prices. And I think that's really what we'll be celebrating this coming week in New York.
Again, I'm remembering when I started in fashion in 1996 and what was like to be a designer back then and what it is like to be a designer now. And certain things are harder, but certain things are easier, right? So it's never been easier to reach a consumer directly, either in terms of presentation or image, but also in terms of sales, right? For example, on Farfetch, we have 3,500 designers, and certainly, the top 100 are maybe, household names and large companies, but the vast majority are new designers, are young businesses, and many times family businesses. Actually, the luxury industry and the fashion industry is a family. Most companies, even the conglomerates, are family businesses, right? So it's actually a very family-oriented industry, ironically. And so I think there's the digitization of the industry has democratized access to audiences and also wallets, right? And this is extremely exciting. Like if in my days back in 1996 as a designer, I had to convince a department store, to 6 months in advance to have any chance to reach a consumer. Right now, a designer can come out of Parsons and, in 6 months, start selling direct, either on their own platforms through, Shopify or some platform like that, or on Farfetch, for example. That's incredible, right? And that's very powerful. That's also good for the maisons because that's where the talent that Nicolas will have in his design studios and the constant recruitment that we need to have to keep these design studios talent in terms of talent supplied is coming from those grassroots, right? So I think this is good for the entire ecosystem, whether you're a super brand or whether you're a small brand. There's a democratization going on. Actually, I would argue that.
Okay, next one. What's the value of a printed fashion magazine in today's digital world? And I think that one's for you. But then also Tracy might have something to say.
Well, I think the sense of something you can hold on to and that has longevity and not something that can disappear on your screen, the way poor Vanessa has disappeared today. I think we need that, the way we've been missing physical fashion shows. We need to have a sense of what we can really hold on to and what is meaningful and what features and articles and writers and photographers and celebrities stay with us, and they stay with you much more on the printed page than they do on something that is digital. And you have to remember that, that's just an entry point. Everything that is in print is also digital today. So again, it's another example of what Jose was talking about at the beginning of the conversation. I think we've all found ways to merge both physical and digital in a way that enhance each other. And what's so wonderful about working in media today is that you have all these platforms, whether it's video or social or digital or events or experiences, conversations like we're having today, or a print publication that enhance each other and have voices that reach so many more people than you did back when Jose was beginning his design company. And it was the same thing. You could only reach a few people. The same with print. And now we have this incredible ability to tell our story to millions, if not billions of people instead of a few 100,000. And how incredible is that? How lucky are we to live in this time?
Yeah, I think that there is an evolution occurring that we're all attempting to make sense of and to incorporate and fold into our different businesses and creative processes. I personally have not given up books and I've not given up magazines. I still have archival magazines from 1983. I have all the Vogues through the 80s. I have all the Ellis through the 80s. I have Casa Vogue. I have all of them. And to touch and feel paper and to really recognize all that goes into the making of a book, the book of an issue of a publication, there's real excellence in craft and curation. And I think part of that is the visual language is changing. You know, you look at a designer like Telfar and Pierre Moss and all of these designers that are changing the visual language of the fashion industry and how we take it in. And I agree with you, Anna, it's like we have access in so many different ways, but nothing changes the paper, the lived experience, and the experience that you get to have by looking at how somebody has curated a book of a magazine from the well to the this. I don't know. I am a real lover of that kind of excellence and point of view. And I think as it evolves, it's even better. It's just changing.
So do you want to say that, like, a little bit like what we are seeing in fashion, like there is an elevation possible for the print in the years coming, right?
Totally right, Nicola. It's like a printed magazine or a book should be of the best quality, something you really want to keep and archive. And thank you so much, Tracy, for doing that. And then that works hand in glove with digital and social and video and all the other elements that we are able to work with today. So I look on it as such a great opportunity for all of us to express ourselves in so many different ways and to reach our readers and our customers and our consumers in so many different ways. And as Tracy pointed out, we're learning every single day.
You know, it's interesting. I think of all the pictures that we take on our phones, and we don't print them the way we used to. You know, I grew up with pictures of my family all over our walls, and a new one would get printed, and, you know, and to have a printed photograph and what that means. And so I think the digital age has given us all access to each other in a really incredible way in the beauty industry, in Hollywood, and in the fashion industry. But there's a part of us catching up and going, okay, this has been the benefit of it. How do we continue to connect to our humanity in a way that makes it better and not just takes us away from those things that are so sacred, like a photograph or a book or a magazine, and those very elevated things that are an expression of who we are?
I think it's about re-emphasizing how we started the conversation, is that it's about quality and creativity, and everything grows from that.
Okay, another one. Do you think fashion is still relevant if sustainability is applied to it? Isn't the word sustainability actually anti-fashion? Nicola, do you want to start that one?
Well, I don't know why they will not cohabitate well. You know, I think it's true that, you know, we all produce new things all the time. But again, I mean, as we said, there's many ways that this fashion proposition can evolve in customizing, in reinterpreting things, in renewing, using not only the fabrics, but also many elements that can be reused. And you know how much fashion in general love vintage and vintage references. And I think the audience too and the customer love when there is an history, when there is craft. So I see a real great opening there. We don't waste that much, and we don't sell clothes for like a crazy discount that make the customer thinks what was the initial values of those clothes when they were first priced at that level, when at the end of the season it's from nothing on the rack. And I think calling fast fashion first, but also every brand, I mean, everyone has to show the example. There is definitely a way to go with more sustainability and not doing sales and trying to control your inventory that do exist and not waste too much is one of the good action you participate with. Yes, what I think.
Fashion is part of civilization. Fashion is part of culture. And this idea that fashion is almost like a second-class citizen in terms of the arts and in terms of the cultural space, which some people really believe that it's not even part of culture, it's just an industry. It's not just an industry. Fashion is part of human civilization. It has always been for millennia. And it is the part of culture that is more an expression of individuality, right? Because we all are listening maybe to the same soundtrack or watching the same series on Netflix, and actually we like to watch the same things so we can have a dialogue and converse, but we're all dressing differently, and that's the point, because we're all expressing our individuality. And as such, that's extremely powerful in driving the sustainability agenda. Because that's an opportunity for consumers that are really trying to communicate their values to do it via fashion, through their choices. And they can do that with fashion in a way they cannot do it through music, or potentially they cannot even do it through other forms of culture, right? So I think this is extremely powerful. Now, the industry has to do a lot, because we know our industry is very polluting, and there's a lot of things that we need, all of us, to improve. Farfetch, obviously part of it, and for example, we're offsetting carbon emissions on all our deliveries and returns since 1 year now. That's one of many things, when there's a long roadmap to become better and better. That's absolutely granted. But the industry can be an advocate for sustainability and can allow consumers to vote with their wallets and actually express their values in a way other parts of culture cannot. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive. On the contrary, I think can be a very powerful association there.
And I think what you're saying about self-expression, and also what fashion can teach the world about culture and what might be happening in society, is so apt. I mean, when I see visitors at the museum really studying in depth all the extraordinary exhibitions that Andrew Bolton has curated, and their fascination and their understanding of a different time, it reaches audiences in a democratic way, in a way that people can maybe understand more instinctively and more easily than sometimes even looking at a great work of art, because it's personal. They can understand there was a person who wore this, that they were expressing themselves, or they were in the thrall of a certain time. So, in terms of sustainability, of course, fashion can do better, and it is doing better. But I think we also have to remember that it can make a wonderful and important social and political statement at the same time.
I also add to that I think research is incredibly important, and I do think people can vote with their wallets. But my experience as a CEO with Pattern was that there's so much data left off the table. And there was a demographic and a large, vast community and consumer that was not being tracked appropriately. And so there was no way to actually buy appropriately, because there was no data to confirm that these were people that were going to shop. And so I think there's a lot to be said that, as you said, it's a personal thing, it's a platform of personal expression, and that fashion is used as a way for people to sort of share who they are, but they also want to see who they are and what they're expressing in their fashion. And sometimes I think it's not just the wallet that gives that information. We have to make a conscious and clear effort to look into the consumer and really find out where the gaps are so that they feel seen and heard.
That brings me to the crucial question of what we are going to wear next. There have been all sorts of predictions about people wanting to dress up and celebrate in vivid clothes. Do you guys believe that? Do you think that that's where we're going?
I mean, Nicola, I'd be so interested to hear what you think, but my sense is that men, women, everybody really wants to get dressed up again, that they want to enjoy themselves, they want to be creative, they want to have fun, they want to be express their individuality. And again, just judging by the calls and questions that are flying towards us in the museum about Monday night, people are really excited about the idea of having some fun with fashion again. And sweatpants are great, but maybe it's time to put them aside for a little while.
I totally agree. I mean, following this period where extremely comfortable clothes and casual dressing became the absolute norm, people are, they're definitely rediscovering their love for dressing up. I mean, it's very clear on the demand we have, at Louis Vuitton, there's a call for a more elevated, more sophisticated wardrobe. It's also interesting. I mean, I think it's how people want to see craftsmanship, wants to know when they buy something with a certain quality, durability, we'll go with it. And I think just before the pandemic, we were at a point, I mean, for me, where sportswear, casual wear, everything was already integrated into our everyday way of dressing. So there was nothing new about it before. And then pandemic happened, and of course we had to face the situation of staying home, and again the norm became more comfortable. And now, I mean, we can see that there is this real desire for something, very more luxurious in a way. Yeah, I can say that. I mean, it's what I notice now in the sales that are happening, but also in the requests that we have at Louis Vuitton.
And the other thing I am really, really pleased to see is customers really paying attention to the sustainability message. So, for example, at Farfetch, we launched what we call the Conscious Edit. So we use a third-party agency to rate every single brand and every single product. If you're a customer, you can filter and buy just the Conscious Edit if you want. That part of the business is growing 3 times faster than the overall business, and it's on a run rate to $200 million, right, this year. So it's a significant business. And the other really encouraging part is diversity and how it's resonating with customers. So this year we did we did many things, but a couple of things that I think worked really well. One was a collaboration with Natal. Another one was a collaboration with Folklore. Folklore is a platform for African designers. We added 75 this year, and they're growing at 66% year on year, so even faster than the rest of the company. So it's really resonating with customers, and that's really encouraging, because we all want to move in the right direction in this industry. Sometimes consumers react positively. Sometimes they're, we don't cut through the noise, and we don't tackle the communication. But I think the pandemic was really an opportunity for consumers to rethink the way they're shopping, and I think that's a really positive trend.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. But obviously the pandemic is part of it. But I think with the constant news about climate change and the weather that we're all experiencing that is so extreme, I think people are becoming more and more aware through their daily lives that this is particularly a younger generation, this is their future, and they have to own it, and they want to associate with designers that share their values, and sustainability and responsibility for climate change, as well as diversity and inclusion, are all part of that. And it's so wonderful to see the customer, the readers, the audiences be so proactive in these all important topics. And I think that's a lot of what we're going to see next week, and in fact in the months to come, is an awareness of how much the world has changed over the last 18 months. And we will see that impact on different ways.
Consumers are really smart. And the truth is that we are all a product of our lived experiences, and you want to feel seen and heard in what you spend your money on. And I think particularly through this pandemic and the unpredictability of the economy, people losing their jobs, but people are still human beings who want to feel like themselves and want to have a sense of their selfhood. And some of that comes from the lipstick that they wear or putting on a beautiful top, but it's something that's an expression of who they are, where they feel like it actually matches their life experience and is about not just looking beautiful, but uplifting humanity. And I think that's the responsibility for all of us who have power, who are in, have voices and in places where our platform has access to many, but we're also behind closed doors where we can make changes so that our industries actually reflect the world that we live in a way that makes us all feel better and actually makes the world a better place. And we know that, the environment, diversity, and by the way, I remind people, it's not just diversity and inclusion, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the equity part of it is actually where fundamental change can occur and systemic change can occur, so that we actually move our world forward and into a place that we can all feel good about. And so those are conscious choices that each of us get to make in our entities and lives and businesses that make a difference.
But I think the other thing that audiences, consumers are asking for is transparency. And transparency around everything that you've just mentioned. And you said behind closed doors, and I think actually the opposite is true, that the more open and honest and direct, and how one takes responsibility for mistakes that you've made and how you intend to hopefully improve in the future is part of the process that we've all been going through during the last year and a half, 2 years.
I think that's a really good point, Anna, and I'm grateful you said it, because the doors should not be closed. And that is part of what I think a lot of my work with DEI includes, is how do we change the pipeline? How do we change the access? How do we open those doors and create a space where all of us can be around the table, or other tables can be built, because the ones that exist don't actually match the world we live in.
Right. And the traceability, I think it's going to be essential. And transparency of, as you say, how things are made in an ethical way, in a sustainable way, of course, in an inclusive way too. But I think with the story of every clothes, in the future is the way that clothes or that items is made will matter. I guess I will not say more, because that's my job to design that, but equally, I hope, as the quality of their design, absolutely. And it will be wonderful to participate actively to that change with the role that we have today. Yes, absolutely.
And Anna, actually, can you give us a hint about what you're going to wear to the Met?
I'm wearing something inspired and in honor of my great friend, Oscar de la Renta.
I want to say thank you so much to our speakers and everyone who joined us remotely. I hope to see you, our audience members, again throughout the month on the @New York Times Fashion Instagram account, where I and my colleagues Elizabeth Payton and Jessica Testa will be speaking with more fashion personalities like Jeremy Scott, Tebi Magugu, Gabriella Hearst, Kate Moss, and more as Fashion Week continues. And if you're not already a subscriber to our weekly fashion newsletter, Open Thread, please be sure to do so with the link in our YouTube chat, because that way we can keep this conversation going all year round. So thank you again to Anna, José, Nicola, and Tracy, and talk to you guys soon.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
a great pleasure, and thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Nicola. Likewise, amazing group of people. Very honored to be part of this. Thank you, and great to speak to you again, Tracy. It's been it was actually last time we were together.
In real one day.
Yes. The last time we were together was in the Met Gala. We were in the same table, weren't we? Yes.
I know. That's what I was thinking. It's a beautiful full circle moment.
Big
Amazing.
hug.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.